Okay, so for this Learn Together, our only Learn Together in this week, because as you've already heard me talk about, and by the way, this might be of interest to you or not, is that I record the Learn Together for the weeks and then I record the attendance. But so by this point, I haven't recorded it, but you've listened to it, so I have to guess what I would say. Anyway, all good. All right, so we're going to finish CRUD. So create, read, update, and delete. And I'm going to show you in my code base how I accomplish this. And in addition, I want you to refactor all of your code that you can refactor. And that's kind of an issue right now, understanding what are the limitations of arrow function. And it really will hit you folks who are using objects. So most of us, because I think only a few are actually still using objects in their writing methods and using it that way. But I would think as we move into more local storage and more complex rendering, you might move away. It's really up to you. Okay, so refactor to include arrow functions. And I didn't say wherever possible because I set it up here. And then in your reply, provide a GitHub link, discuss your plans for Dev 1, and for full points, have working code and reply to 2 of your fellow student posts. So just as a refresher, right? So here's and actually I used truthy values. I didn't use a ternary operator, although I think I will because it'd just be fun in this case. And actually I could go back as he did in this one and rewrite the get out of local storage. I think I will actually, because I think that's a good way to do it. So here's my code base for my daily task, my morning task. And for a minute here, let me just go ahead and clear the local storage so that we can see that there's nothing in there. If I wake up at 6, I am driving. There's the task, right? So I have for the CRUD operations for the CRUD operations, I've done a create and a read, right? Because part of this process is not part of it, but part of this, what we've learned how to do is accept the user input with validation. Okay. Capture that information that they're providing, process some kind of data, store that in the local storage. Okay. Retrieve it often, especially if we're depending on when we're doing the render, back to the browser. All right, so I've got the create, I've got the read down. So at this point, if I've added, let me just make it a little bigger so you can see it here. It should pop up. Oh, that's right. I forget when you're in DevTools and you want to make it bigger, do it that way. So now I've added the little render. I've rendered a button, and in that button, I add an event listener and code, and then in that I use the splice to splice that entry out. So if I hit X here, it gets rid of it, and you can see it here that it's now returning an empty array when I do that. So if I do put that in again, cool, I have it back. Okay, so that's my delete. So I jumped over the U and CRUD, right? So I've shown you the C, R, and the D. So let me show you my update, which I think can be a little more challenging depending on what you do. And this is where, you're taking what you're learning from Andrew's course and you're making it work for your particular application. So for my particular application, as you saw last week, when I click on it using the building the DOM, right? Each DOM element at a time allows me to then pass it. And this is a little bit of a review, right? Use that UUID to target that specific entry that I have. And then I list out my items. So what I did here is I decided to just, did you complete all tasks? I thought about individually putting it here, but I actually kind of thought about something else, is that one of the things I could see in the future doing is this using this concept for like a machine learning to where I would want to validate. I could use this kind of input to see if my machine learning algorithm actually did a good job of determining my tasks for the morning based on the time. So right now I'm using code to do it, but in the future, what I could do is have it run. If I say all tasks complete, right? That says yes, the algorithm did a good job on this. But regardless, it was also easier. So maybe that's the other thing. So here, if I click, right now I have a breakpoint set, so I'll just go ahead and let this run. So nothing happens here, okay? But it actually does happen because if you go and look, and this is how I changed it, was in my local storage, I added when I originally created my object in my array that was then saved into local storage. I updated it by adding a key of task complete and I set it as a default of true, very much like what we saw Andrew do. Okay. So at this point, and I'll show you the code in a minute, but say clicking it as saved, or this is a checkbox. When I check it, not only does it, what it has to do is actually say, well, actually, I'll just show you. But let me just show you this. If I return, right, returns me back to the list, and when I come back, it then renders that task via my updated information. So I'm updating my entry in local storage. Okay. Now I can prove this to you by doing another item. So let's say 7, right? So what happens here, here's the new task. This is not complete, so it's not going to show as complete, but this one, the first one, will show as complete because it is being rendered based on the data that's stored in local storage. Okay, so let me move over to VS Code for a minute. Oh, wrong one. Why do I have two? Oh, yeah, I was playing around with something. Okay, now I remember why. So this is just the code, and in my case, remember where he did the edit? I did day. If you look, just FYI, right? So this is the day HTML that we're passing that UUID through the location assigned. So what I did here first is I rendered, this is what I did from last week, but I ended up doing this, which is I created a function that said show task complete DOM. Okay. So then I actually dynamically rendered this element into my HTML. Now I could have just wrote the HTML for this inside the HTML file, but I decided, and I think this is where you kind of go, it makes more sense for me now now that I know how to dynamically do it, just go ahead and dynamically create that, right? And then, so I first created because I did create a div, and then inside of that div, I created a span. And then I updated that span content. And then I appended it in. And then I said task complete, or sorry, document create and input. And then I set the attribute of that to a checkbox. Okay, so I first created it because a checkbox is just an input. And then I set the attribute. And this is where, and actually I can get rid of this. This is where I did some logic checking to say day dot task complete. If day dot task complete, so this is using a truthy value. If it's true, right? If day dot task complete, what's coming in. Now, let me show you what this is, just so you can kind of get an idea. So if I come over here, once I render the page, and this is really good to like, I was already doing it down here, but I have access to, because I have already in my JavaScript run and gotten that specific day based on the UUID. Okay. So that's what that's referring to. You will name yours, whatever you're naming it. Okay. So, but I said if task.complete, meaning if it was right complete, then mark it as true. And the reason I did this is if it's not, right, then I wouldn't do checked equals true. And this just sets the value in the checkbox based on if this is true. And if it's false, I don't have to because it automatically renders fine. And now what I did is I appended that into the child, and then I wrote just a quick, and I definitely could have done this, and actually I want to do it better, but kind of the first round is you just get it working. So then I set task complete because it's an event. I already have the DOM element. I said a click. I said if task complete, right? So in other words, this is what I'm coding for here, is that I want to be able to, when I'm here, right, check it off. And if I come over here and I look at day, right, then that should be false. And if I check it on, I want to be able to look at that and it should be true. Okay, so that's that task complete. So that's the logic that I wrote, just quick and dirty, for if it's true, then set it to false and save it. And actually here, you know what I could have done now that I'm looking at this? Sorry, let me complete here though, and then I say else task day dot task complete equal true, and then I save it. But because, and this is something to start thinking about, because I do this both ways, all I have to do is do it at the end. Okay. Actually, let me do this. Yeah. Let me just do that. So I do my if checks, and which, by the way, sounds like a perfect opportunity to do a ternary. So I think I will rewrite this as a ternary operation. Okay. Then this is really how I set that true false value. And then I save it inside my event listener. Okay. So I just want you to know how I approach mine. You're going to want to think about how, but I want to see in your work all those operations, even if it doesn't feel meaningful. Okay. Because in some ways I was like, this doesn't feel completely meaningful. Maybe not, but it does accomplish the task. Okay. Okay. So I walked you through mine. Oh, if you didn't notice, I did refactor all of my functions, both in my, again, which you may think of as edit, but then in my functions as well, I rewrote all of those to be arrow functions because in my case, I wasn't using objects and therefore I could use them. Okay. So I should only see not arrow functions where you have a need for them, which is something you'll see me later. And I talk about this. Anyway, I'm going to leave that discussion for later. So refactor, update, first create your new directory, copy your code from week 5. I'm not adding any validation here. If you didn't get that part, you definitely want to, because that'll be part of our dev 1, which I'm going to go review just the details one more time of that and set up so that you will have the attendance so you can sign up for sessions and we'll walk through that. But remember this week, right? We don't have your learn together for your Thursday item because you have your dev 1 and it'll work the same way it does before. But again, I'm going to stop myself from that discussion because really all I wanted to show you is that I had completed my CRUD operations for my code base for learn together. Okay, talk to you later. Hope this helps.